Imagine a world filled with sounds, smells, and images that are completely inaccessible to us. A world where a casual walk in the park is an exciting symphony of information, and a familiar street is a detailed map of invisible traces and messages. This is what our reality looks like from a dog's perspective. Today we will embark on an amazing journey and learn about 17 shocking things that only dogs can see and hear, which completely transform their perception of the surrounding world. Dogs live in a world that differs greatly from ours. Imagine being able to hear whispers from several blocks away, distinguish trillions of smells, or see the world in slow motion, as if in high-quality slow-motion footage. Sounds like a superpower from a science fiction movie. For dogs, this is everyday reality. Their sense organs are tuned completely differently than ours, and today we will reveal these amazing differences that make the world of dogs so rich and multifaceted that it's difficult for us humans to even imagine. Let's start with the first amazing fact. Dogs can hear ultrasound. While the human ear can detect sounds with frequencies up to 20,000 hertz, dogs can hear up to 45,000 hertz, and some breeds up to 65,000. This means they perceive an entire world of sounds that simply doesn't exist for us. When you're sitting quietly, in the silence of your home, your pet might be hearing ultrasonic signals from electronic devices, the squeaking of mice behind the wall, or even the sound of a moth's wings flying across the room. What's even more surprising is that dogs can identify ultrasound sources with incredible precision. They can determine not only the direction, but also the distance to the source, with an error of just a few centimeters. This ability developed in their ancestors for hunting small rodents, which often communicate using high-frequency sounds. Imagine watching a movie without sound and then suddenly turning on not only the main soundtrack, but also 10 additional tracks inaudible to the average viewer. That's approximately how a dog's world of sounds differs from ours. In everyday life, this ability manifests in dogs often reacting to sounds we cannot hear. For example, they might become anxious due to a siren signal several minutes before it becomes audible to humans. Or, suddenly, listen to a wall behind which, as it later turns out, mice have settled. Some researchers even suggest that dogs can hear the sounds of crystals growing during water freezing or snowflake formation, which explains their special excitement before snowfall. Let's move on to the second amazing fact. Dogs see movement much better than we do. Their visual system is tuned to detect the slightest movements in the environment, even in low-light conditions. If we could see the world through a dog's eyes during a walk, we would notice how leaves barely sway in the wind hundreds of meters away, how a beetle moves unnoticeably to us in the grass on the other side of the field, or how a bird's shadow flickers high in the sky. This ability is connected to the special structure of the dog's eye retina, where rods, photoreceptors responsible for black and white vision and movement perception, predominate. Dogs have a density of these cells 2 to 3 times higher than humans. Additionally, their nervous system processes movement signals with higher priority than color or shape signals. This evolutionary advantage inherited from their hunter ancestors helps dogs survive and find prey in the wild. Interestingly, dogs' ability to distinguish movement is so developed that they can notice an object moving at a speed of just 1 or 2 millimeters per second. For comparison, humans need a movement speed about 10 times higher to notice displacement. When your dog suddenly freezes and stares intently into seemingly empty space, he may have noticed the movement of a leaf swaying under the influence of warm air from a radiator, or a tiny insect crawling on the wall. The third amazing ability dogs can predict natural disasters. Several hours before an earthquake, they often start showing anxiety, barking, whining, or trying to leave the building. Researchers from Japan and California have documented hundreds of cases where dogs predicted earthquakes 24 to 48 hours before the first tremors. The fact is that dogs can detect changes in Earth's electromagnetic field that occur before seismic activity. Additionally, they hear low-frequency sounds produced by tectonic plate movements, so-called infrasounds, with frequencies that can be less than 1 hertz. The human ear does not perceive sounds below 16 hertz, so we remain unaware until the earthquake itself begins. But dogs can sense not only earthquakes, they also react to approaching hurricanes, tornadoes, and even tsunamis. Before a hurricane approaches, dogs might start eating more than usual, as if stocking up on energy, or conversely, refuse food due to stress. Some dogs begin hiding favorite toys in safe places, as if preparing for disaster. This isn't mysticism or a sixth sense. It's simply a more sensitive perception of physical changes in the environment. Some countries are already developing early warning systems for natural disasters based on observing dog behavior. The fourth phenomenon: dogs see the world in slow motion. Their eyes process visual information faster than ours. While movies look smooth to humans at 24 frames per second, dogs need about 80 frames for the image to appear continuous. For dogs, our regular television looks like a slideshow. They see individual frames where we perceive smooth movement. This feature of vision is related to the fact that a dog's retina contains more fast ganglion cells responsible for transmitting information to the brain. Additionally, their brain processes visual signals faster. As a result, dogs perceive movements that seem lightning fast to us as slower and more distinguishable. This ability is especially useful during hunting or play. That's why your dog so easily catches a thrown ball or frisbee. For him, these objects move as if in slow motion. If a tennis player had such vision, tennis would seem like child's play. The ball would fly so slowly that it could be easily returned. Imagine watching a sports competition with a slow-mo function. That's approximately how the world looks to a dog. The fifth shocking fact: dogs can hear human heartbeats. Thanks to their incredible hearing, they pick up not only loud sounds but also quiet, rhythmic pulsations inside our bodies. When you're nervous or experiencing fear, your heartbeat accelerates, and the dog hears this. Dogs can distinguish the heartbeats of different people and even recognize a specific person by their heart rhythm. Experiments have shown that dogs can hear heartbeats from a distance of up to 3 to 4 meters in a quiet room. They detect not only the sound itself, but also its changes. When a person lies, their heart rhythm usually changes, which doesn't escape the dog's attention. That's why it's so difficult to hide emotions from them. They literally hear how your heart betrays you. This ability plays an important role in forming the emotional bond between dog and human. Puppies who sleep next to their owner often synchronize their breathing and heartbeat with the humans, strengthening their attachment. It's no surprise that dogs recognize our emotional state so well and often come to comfort their owner in moments of stress or anxiety. The sixth amazing feature: dogs can see ultraviolet light. Unlike humans, their eyes can perceive part of the ultraviolet spectrum. We have a lens in our eye that blocks ultraviolet rays, protecting the retina from damage. Dogs' lenses allow more ultraviolet light through, expanding their color perception. This means they see many things invisible to us. For example, fresh urine on snow looks like a bright glowing spot to a dog due to chemical compounds that reflect ultraviolet rays. Many flowers have ultraviolet patterns guiding insects to nectar. Dogs also see these patterns, invisible to the human eye. Surprisingly, this ability helps dogs in hunting. Rodent urine traces form glowing paths for them, which are easy to track even in darkness. White fur of animals, such as Arctic hares or polar foxes, reflects ultraviolet light, making them more visible to dogs despite their camouflage. Imagine that during an ordinary walk, your pet sees glowing traces and marks left by other animals, messages completely hidden from our view. The seventh fact, dogs can hear plants growing. Sounds incredible, but it's confirmed by scientific research. When plants grow, their cells stretch and divide, creating very quiet sounds with frequencies from 20 to 100 hertz. These sounds occur due to water movement in plant capillaries and cell wall rupture during division. These sounds are inaccessible to the human ear due to their extremely low volume, about 10 decibels, comparable to a whisper from 30 meters away. But dogs hear them thanks to the special structure of their auditory apparatus. Their ear flaps act as parabolic antennas, collecting and amplifying sound waves. Perhaps that's why many dogs love being in gardens or near houseplants. For them, it's a real sound concert. Plants sound especially active in spring and early summer when growth is most intense. Interestingly, different plant species produce different sounds when growing, and dogs can distinguish these sound signatures. Imagine being able to hear grass growing or flowers blooming. For dogs, this is commonplace. The eighth amazing fact, dogs can see human auras. No, we're not talking about mystical glowing or esoteric fields. Dogs can indeed see changes in a person's body temperature and the tiniest muscle movements that we don't notice. Their vision partially works in the infrared range, allowing them to distinguish thermal signatures. When a person is angry, happy, or experiencing pain, their body radiates different amounts of heat, and facial muscles make micro-movements. For example, during stress, blood flow increases in the forehead and cheek areas, making these zones warmer. When happy, muscles around the eyes and lips activate, creating a characteristic thermal pattern. Dogs perceive these changes as a kind of aura that tells them about our emotional and physical state. Experiments with thermal imagers have confirmed that dogs react to changes in human body temperature even within 1 degree. They also notice micro movements of facial muscles that occur fractions of a second before a person consciously changes their facial expression. That's why sometimes it seems that a dog reads the mind of its owner. It simply perceives signals that we unconsciously send even before we understand our own emotions. The ninth fact, dogs can hear electricity. They can perceive electromagnetic oscillations coming from wires and electrical appliances. These oscillations create weak sound waves that dogs pick up thanks to their highly sensitive hearing. For a dog, a working refrigerator or television in standby mode is a source of constant noise, resembling a low hum or buzz. Each electrical appliance has its unique sound signature that a dog can recognize. A microwave sounds different from a computer, and a smartphone creates a completely different electromagnetic noise than an electric toothbrush. Some dogs can even predict electrical appliance breakdowns by reacting to changes in their electromagnetic field. Before breaking down, devices often begin generating unstable electromagnetic oscillations that people don't notice, but dogs hear. Interestingly, this ability may explain why some dogs fear storms long before the first thunderclaps appear. They hear electrical discharges in the atmosphere preceding lightning. Imagine your house filled with invisible sound signals, and you'll begin to understand why sometimes dogs seem anxious without apparent reason. The 10th amazing ability. Dogs see in complete darkness much better than we do. Their eyes contain more light-sensitive rod cells and a special mirror coating behind the retina called tapetum lucidum reflects light back through the retina, increasing the amount of light available for processing. That's why dogs' eyes glow in the dark when light falls on them. It's reflection from the tapetum lucidum. While humans need illumination of at least 1 lux to distinguish objects, dogs need only 1/5 of this value. They can see by the light of a single star or moonlight reflection from snow. For a dog, a night walk is not the same as for us, where we see only dark silhouettes. They distinguish details and movements. Interestingly, dogs' night vision isn't black and white, as commonly believed. They see in the dark in pale blue-green tones, since rods responsible for night vision are most sensitive to this part of the spectrum. Their night vision is approximately 5 times better than ours, making dogs ideal night guards. The 11th shocking fact, dogs can hear cancer. Yes, you heard correctly. Thanks to their incredible sense of smell and hearing, dogs can detect cancer cells in early stages of development. The fact is that cancer cells have a unique smell and produce special sound vibrations when dividing. When cells divide, their membranes vibrate, creating ultrasonic waves with frequencies from 30 to 70 kilohertz. Healthy cells and cancer cells vibrate differently due to differences in their structure. These changes are too small for human perception, but dogs pick them up thanks to their amazing hearing. Additionally, cancer cells emit special volatile organic compounds, VOCs, that differ from substances emitted by healthy cells. Dogs can distinguish these chemical signatures even at concentrations of a few parts per trillion. That's like detecting a drop of substance in 20 Olympic swimming pools. That's why they often sniff or lick a specific area of a person's body where a tumor is subsequently discovered. In medicine, specially trained dogs are already being used for early diagnosis of certain types of cancer, including lung cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer, and melanoma. Their accuracy reaches 95%, surpassing many modern medical tests. The 12th amazing feature, dogs can see the past. No, they don't time travel, but their sense of smell allows them to recreate events that occurred several hours or even days ago. A dog's nose contains from 200 to 300 million olfactory receptors compared to 6 million in humans. Moreover, the brain area responsible for processing smells is 40 times larger in dogs than in us. When a dog sniffs the ground, it's not just looking for something interesting, it's reading history. Smells tell it who was here, when, in which direction they moved, whether they were healthy or sick, whether they experienced fear or were calm. Dogs can determine how much time has passed since someone left their scent with accuracy to within a few minutes. Interestingly, dogs perceive smells not only holistically, but can also separate complex aromas into components. Where we smell simply soup aroma, a dog distinguishes separately meat, vegetables, spices, and even the water used to prepare it. This ability allows them to create a detailed time map of smells. For a dog, a park familiar to us is a real-time machine where every centimeter of ground stores information about the past. They can see not only that someone passed by an hour ago, but also that this someone stopped, sat on a bench, ate a sandwich, and talked with another person. And all this simply from molecules of smell remaining in the air. The 13th fact, dogs hear micro-vibrations of the human body. Each of us constantly produces many micro-movements that create barely noticeable vibrations. Breathing, heartbeat, blood movement, through vessels, digestive system operation, even muscle contractions during thought processes. All this creates a unique sound portrait of a person. Dogs hear these vibrations thanks to the special structure of their inner ear. A dog's eardrum is thinner than a human's and can detect air oscillations with amplitudes of just a few nanometers. Additionally, dogs' auditory bones are more mobile and more efficiently transmit sound vibrations. By these micro vibrations, dogs can determine whether a person is healthy or sick, calm or anxious. For example, lung inflammation changes the nature of respiratory sounds long before obvious symptoms appear. Elevated blood sugar changes the sound of blood movement through vessels. Depression and anxiety cause specific patterns of muscle tension that manifest in body microvibrations. This explains why many dogs can predict epilepsy attacks, hypoglycemia, or panic attacks several minutes before they begin. They hear changes in our body's functioning. Services assisting people with diabetes and epilepsy already use specially trained dogs that warn owners about an approaching attack, giving them time to take medication or move to a safe place. The 14th amazing ability: dogs can see Earth's magnetic fields. Scientists have discovered that dogs' eyes have special cells containing the magnetosensitive protein cryptochrome. This protein reacts to Earth's magnetic field, sending signals to the brain. Thanks to this, dogs literally see the magnetic lines of our planet. These lines appear to dogs as a kind of light bands superimposed on normal visual perception. The intensity and direction of these bands depend on the strength and direction of the magnetic field. Notably, dogs perceive the magnetic field better in low light conditions when their vision is less distracted by other visual stimuli. This ability helps them navigate space and find their way home with incredible accuracy. Research has shown that dogs prefer to position themselves along the north-south axis during rest and defecation. When Earth's magnetic field is stable, 90% of dogs align along magnetic lines. During magnetic storms, this behavior becomes more chaotic. For a dog, the whole world is covered with an invisible grid of magnetic lines that serve as a kind of map. That's why lost dogs are often able to return home, covering huge distances. There have been documented cases where dogs found their way home from hundreds of kilometers away, even if they were transported in closed containers, depriving them of the ability to memorize the route by smells or visual landmarks. The 15th shocking fact: dogs can hear thoughts. No, they're not telepaths in the direct sense of the word, but they do perceive neurochemical processes in our brain. When we think, our brain generates electrical impulses and releases certain chemicals. These processes create weak electromagnetic oscillations and emit microscopic particles that dogs can detect with their sensitive hearing and smell. Brain electrical activity creates an electromagnetic field that extends beyond the skull. Modern electroencephalographs, EEGs, register this activity through the scalp. Dogs, thanks to their sensitivity to electromagnetic oscillations, can detect changes in this field, especially during intense mental activity or strong emotions. Additionally, the chemical composition of our breath changes during thinking. The brain consumes about 20% of all oxygen in the body, and this indicator increases during active thinking. The composition of exhaled air also changes. Specific volatile compounds associated with neurotransmitters appear. Dogs can detect these subtle changes. That's why sometimes it seems that a dog reacts to our thoughts. It really does perceive physical changes occurring in our brain during the thought process. Dogs hear thoughts related to strong emotions or intentions concerning the dog itself especially clearly. For example, thoughts about walking, feeding, or playing. The 16th amazing feature: dogs can see your dreams. More precisely, they perceive the physical manifestations of dreams. During REM sleep, when we have the most vivid and emotional dreams, our eyes move under the eyelids, muscles slightly twitch, breathing and heart rhythms change, and certain hormones and neurotransmitters are released. All these changes create a unique picture for canine perception. Thanks to their acute hearing, dogs detect the slightest changes in human breathing and heartbeat during sleep. They can also detect muscle micro-movements that correspond to actions in our dreams. For example, when we dream of running, leg muscles slightly tense, although externally this is almost imperceptible. Dogs register these signals and interpret them based on previous experience. Research shows that dogs show increased attention to sleeping owners precisely during REM sleep, when dreams are most intense. Moreover, they can distinguish the nature of dreams by the chemical composition of our sweat. Nightmares and anxious dreams cause the release of adrenaline and cortisol, which change body odor. Pleasant dreams, conversely, are accompanied by the release of endorphins and serotonin, creating a different chemical profile. Dogs can determine whether a person is having a nightmare or a pleasant dream, and often wake up and approach their owner if they sense distress during sleep. They might start licking the sleeping person's hands, quietly whining, or simply lie nearby, providing a sense of protection and security. Many dog owners note that they wake up from nightmares precisely due to their pet's intervention. For a dog, a sleeping human is an open book of emotions and experiences. Especially interesting is that dogs show different reactions to dreams featuring themselves. If the owner dreams of playing with the dog or walking, the pet might start wagging its tail, or even quietly whimpering with joy, reacting to positive emotions associated with it in the dream. This is one of the most amazing examples of the emotional connection between human and dog. And finally, the 17th fact: dogs can hear intentions. Before performing any action, our body prepares for it. Certain muscles tense, breathing changes, heartbeat accelerates or slows down, blood flow redistributes. All these preparations occur fractions of a second before we consciously decide to move and create a unique sound and chemical pattern that dogs can perceive. For example, before getting up from the couch, we unconsciously tense leg and back muscles, slightly change body position, and take a deeper breath. For a dog, these micro movements and changes in breathing are a clear signal of our intention. Similarly, before opening the refrigerator, we unconsciously glance in its direction, slightly turn our head, and change muscle tone. The dog picks up these preparatory signals and reacts to them. Research using high-speed filming and muscle activity sensors has shown that dogs react to human intentions 100 to 200 milliseconds before visible movement begins. This happens faster than a person realizes their own decision to act. Neurobiologists explain this by the fact that our subconscious makes decisions earlier than they reach consciousness, and the body begins preparation for action before we realize it. This ability of dogs is especially evident in the work of service and herding dogs, which must anticipate human intentions for effective interaction. Guide dogs often change direction of movement just before a person consciously decides to turn, reacting to subtle body signals. And herding dogs can recognize intentions not only of people, but also animals, predicting where a sheep will run even before it decides to move. That's why your pet often knows that you're going to get up from the couch, take the leash, or open the refrigerator, even before you fully realized this intention. The dog hears how your body prepares for action. And this isn't some mystical connection, but the result of millions of years of evolution that have turned dogs into amazing specialists in reading human behavior. Now let's look at how all these amazing abilities of dogs manifest in their daily life and interaction with humans. Imagine a typical day through the eyes and ears of your dog. Morning begins long before you wake up. The dog already hears how your breathing changes when transitioning from deep sleep to lighter sleep. It perceives chemical changes in the air associated with your awakening and registers micro movements of your body under the blanket. When you go to the kitchen to prepare breakfast, the dog isn't simply following you. It's swimming in a sea of information. It hears electrical appliances working, feels temperature changes of various surfaces, sees ultraviolet and infrared signatures of products. A piece of bread that fell from the table several days ago and was thoroughly cleaned up still leaves a bright scent trail for it. During a walk in the park, every bush, every tree, every centimeter of ground tells it a story. It learns which dogs have been here, what mood they were in, whether they're healthy. It hears sounds inaccessible to you, from the high-frequency squeaking of insects to the low hum of underground communications. It sees the world in slow motion, noticing every leaf movement, every insect flight. And all this time, it remains tuned to you, your gait, breathing, heartbeat, mood, and intentions. This makes us think about how limited our own perception is. We're used to considering our sense organs as the standard, but in reality, we perceive only a tiny part of the information available in the surrounding world. Dogs remind us that reality is much richer and more multifaceted than we can imagine. And perhaps that's why dogs have become our faithful companions throughout millennia. They complement our perception of the world, making it more complete and rich. They warn us of dangers we cannot detect and notice changes in our health earlier than we do ourselves. They react to our emotions and intentions, often understanding us better than we understand ourselves. This amazing connection between two species that perceive the world so differently is one of the most remarkable examples of interaction in nature. Dogs don't just live beside us, they live in symbiosis, using their unique abilities to help us, protect us, and enrich our lives. It's important to note that all these amazing abilities of dogs are not fiction or exaggeration, but the result of scientific research and observations. Scientists continue to study how dogs perceive the world, and with each new study, we learn more amazing facts about our four-legged friends. Perhaps the most amazing thing about dogs is their ability to live simultaneously in two worlds, in their own, filled with incredible sounds, smells, and images, and in ours, the human world. And despite the fact that their perception of reality differs from ours, they have learned to understand us, adapt to our lifestyle, and communication. The next time your dog suddenly becomes alert, stares into emptiness, or starts worrying without apparent reason, remember, he's not going crazy. He simply sees and hears what's inaccessible to you. And this isn't a disadvantage, but an amazing feature that makes dogs such unique and valuable human companions. They live in a world that largely remains a mystery to us, but by their presence in our lives, they make this mystery a little closer and more understandable. By observing dog behavior, we can get some idea of those aspects of reality that are usually hidden from us. When a dog suddenly raises its head and looks at the sky several minutes before we hear an approaching storm, it shows us that the world of sounds is richer than we think. When it carefully avoids a place where a person experiencing fear or aggression recently stood, it demonstrates that emotions leave physical traces in space. And perhaps it's this ability of dogs to perceive the world differently than we do that makes them such indispensable helpers in various fields, from finding lost people to detecting drugs, from predicting epilepsy attacks to providing emotional support for people with mental disorders. In each of these cases, we rely on their unique abilities that complement and expand our own. Thank you for your attention. If you enjoyed this amazing journey into the world of canine perception, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. And in the comments, tell us about the unusual behavior of your pets. Perhaps now you can explain it from a new perspective. Until next time.